Most content about starting a business in the Netherlands will tell you that ZZP is the simple, fast, low-cost option. Set up in a day, no notary required, no minimum capital, low administrative overhead. That's accurate. For people who are already in the Netherlands, already have residency and are starting a freelance practice. For a non-EU entrepreneur applying from outside the country, choosing ZZP can close the startup visa door before you have submitted a single application. The entity structure decision is not just a business setup question. It determines which immigration route is open to you. Most people who get this wrong find out mid-process with a consultant who has been running the wrong pathway. I run a company called Beyond, and we handle Netherlands immigration and company formation together. Because the two decisions are linked, a significant part of our work is untangling the situation for people who set up the wrong structure before they found us. The connection between entity structure and immigration route is what most people miss, and it determines whether you start on the right path or have to rebuild later. What BV and ZZP actually are. If you have been researching this for a while, you have probably already encountered both terms. Here is a quick grounding before we get to what matters. A BV, besloten vennootschap, is a Dutch private limited company. It's a legal entity separate from you. You are the director. The company has its own legal standing, its own bank account, its own tax identity. It can have shareholders, it can hold assets, it has ongoing compliance requirements, annual accounts, bookkeeping, a minimum director salary once the company is generating revenue. Setting up a BV requires a notary and a deed of incorporation. The minimum share capital requirement was removed. A BV can now be incorporated with €1 in share capital, but the structure itself has real costs. Notary fees, registration, ongoing administration. A ZZP, zelfstandig zonder personeel, is a sole trader structure. You register as a self-employed individual. There is no separate legal entity. You and the business are legally the same person. Registration is simpler. Administration is lighter. Costs are lower. Both are legitimate business structures used by thousands of businesses in the Netherlands. The question is, which one connects to the immigration route that applies to your situation? The immigration routes they connect to. This is where it matters. The Netherlands Startup Visa, the route most non-EU entrepreneurs are researching, is designed for company building. The process runs through an approved facilitator, through RVO scoring, through the IND. What you are presenting to the RVO is a business case for a startup with Dutch market potential. The standard legal structure for this is a BV. The reason is built into the design of the route. The RVO and IND are evaluating a company, a business plan, Dutch revenue potential, growth trajectory. The startup visa is not designed for individual freelancers. It is designed for people starting a company with clients, a Dutch market angle, and the potential to build something here. The self-employed permit, de zelfstandige verblijfsvergunning, is the immigration route that connects to ZZP. This permit doesn't use the facilitator pathway. There is no startup visa phase. The IND evaluates whether you as an individual have an established self-employment situation with Dutch market presence, existing Dutch clients, documented working relationships, demonstrated earning capacity from Dutch work. The self-employed permit is not built for people arriving with a new business idea and no Dutch presence yet. So the pattern that catches people. You do your research, you read content about starting a business in the Netherlands, most of which is written for people already in NL with EU residency. You decide ZZP is the sensible low-cost option and you start down that path. Then someone tells you the startup visa doesn't apply to a ZZP structure and you have to go back to the beginning. When ZZP is a viable path, this isn't a blanket rule. There are situations where ZZP and the self-employed permit are the right path for a non-EU entrepreneur. If you already have an established relationship with Dutch clients, documented invoicing with Dutch clients, a track record of earning from Dutch work, the self-employed permit evaluation is built for that situation. The IND wants to see evidence you're already working in the Dutch market. If you have that evidence, the route is viable. If you're coming in as a specialist in a field with demonstrably high market demand, certain IT, engineering or professional service areas, and you can document that demand with actual client relations, the self-employed permit route is worth evaluating. If you're a Turkish national, the EU-Turkey Ankara Agreement changes the dynamics in ways that affect both routes. I covered that in a dedicated video on the Turkish situation. The standstill clause means the startup visa's RVO points threshold doesn't apply the same way to Turkish applicants, which changes the calculation for how you approach the structure decision. I will link that video in the description. For most non-EU entrepreneurs arriving with a new business, no existing Dutch client base and no prior Dutch market presence, the startup visa plus BV path is a relevant one. ZZP in that situation connects to an immigration route that requires evidence you don't yet have. If you're pursuing the startup visa or the HSM route via your own BV, the structure is BV, and for HSM specifically, the BV is not optional. HSM is an employment visa. The BV employs you and you draw a DGA salary above the IND threshold. ZZP is self-employment. It doesn't create an employment relationship, which means it can't support an HSM application. If HSM is your route, the BV question is already answered. The real questions are how it's set up and why the director relationship looks like, because there are complications specific to foreign-owned BVs. The director's residency status during setup, the bank account opening process for a non-resident owned company, the UBO registration, the corporate governance requirements. These are details that need to be handled correctly, but none of them are blockers. Banking for a foreign-owned BV is worth knowing about in advance. At the major Dutch banks ING, ABN AMRO, Rabobank, the account opening process for non-resident owned companies runs through automated KYC screening that frequently results in a first round rejection. This is a documented and common friction point, not an edge case. There are alternative providers and workarounds, and I covered the Dutch banking situation in full in a separate video that I will link below. The BV also positions you correctly for year one. When you apply for the self-employed permit at the end of the startup visa year, the IND evaluates the BV's documented Dutch activity, clients, revenues, market engagement. That evidence base needs a legal entity behind it, and the BV produces the right documentation trail. One question that comes up: can you start with ZZP and convert to a BV later? You can transfer assets and operations. You cannot transfer an immigration history. Time spent on the wrong pathway doesn't carry over. The structured choice shapes more than the entry route. It shapes the entire first year of operation. A BV on the startup visa means you're building a documented evidence trail from day one. Dutch clients invoice through the company. Dutch revenue in the company accounts, Dutch market activity that will be evaluated when you apply for the self-employed permit at year end. The year-end permit application uses that documentation. The earlier and more systematically you build it, the stronger that application is. A BV director earning revenue is also subject to the minimum salary requirement, the DGA rules. The appropriate salary level depends on the business and sector, and this is something to plan for in your financial model from the start rather than discovering it later. For applicants where ZZP and the self-employed permit are the right path, the year one dynamics are different. Lighter administration, no mandatory salary structure, but also no startup visa year as a transition. You need to be operating and earning from existing Dutch client relationships from day one. Get the structure right before you set anything up. Fixing it mid-process costs time and money, and the time doesn't come back. How to make this decision for your situation? 3 questions to orient yourself. First, do you have existing Dutch clients, documented invoicing, established professional relationship with Dutch companies before you apply? If yes, the self-employed permit route is worth exploring seriously. If no, the startup visa and BV path is the right starting point. Second, are you Turkish? If so, the Ankara Agreement changes, which rules apply and how. Get specific advice on your situation before choosing a structure, because the calculation is different. Third, is your business model company shaped? Multiple clients, Dutch market growth as the goal, potential to scale, or is it fundamentally one person delivering professional services? If your model is company shaped, the BV and startup visa route is a relevant one. If it's individual professional services with existing Dutch market activity, the self-employed permit is worth a proper look. If the answer is to any of these is unclear, it is exactly the kind of decision that benefits from a proper assessment before anything gets set up. At Beyond, this is part of the initial conversation we have with everyone before we recommend a pathway. I will put a link in the description. The structured decision is one of the first things that gets locked in, and one of the hardest to reverse once you're mid-process. Getting it right at the start is worth more time than most people give it. One more thing, for anyone pursuing Dutch residency through HSM, BV is the only structure that works. HSM requires employment. ZZP is self-employment. There is no version of the HSM route on a ZZP structure. If that's your pathway, you already have your answer on structure. If you want everything that goes into setting up a Dutch company done correctly, from KVK registration to recognized sponsor requirements, I put together a checklist that covers it all. It's in the description. If you haven't seen the full end-to-end timeline video, what actually happens from the decision to move through permit processing through year one, that's on the channel and it's linked in the description. Subscribe for weekly content on Netherlands immigration and business setup for non-EU entrepreneurs.